Powerless by Patentpending. Chapter 3. Astronomer guy too good, too pure for this world. The next day, Virgil blinked himself awake. He padded into the main room and opened the refrigerator. With the exception of a carton of orange juice and a head of lettuce, it was empty. Virgil frowned. When had he bought that lettuce? He didn't eat healthy. Everything was perfectly normal. Shrugging, he uncapped the OJ and tilted his head back to chug it, the long line of his rippling neck with every gulp. He tried to chuck it in the trash can, but missed. He gave the empty can a long, suffering look. Even in the sanctity of his own misery home, he was betrayed by his favorite drink. Everything was perfectly normal. He picked up the carton and placed it in the trash can, like a boring person who can't hit something 5 feet away does. His eyes caught on his phone. Something itched at the corner of his mind. He roamed back to his room, flipping open his anachronistically basic laptop. He decided to check his email for any response about a job. Maybe today the universe at large would decide it didn't hate him. Everything was perfect. Wait. That was most certainly not normal. A notice from his bank was not uncommon. They liked to remind people that they were in crippling debt. What was unusual was the fact that his account wasn't in the negatives. Far from it, actually. So it hadn't been a dream. The normality of his morning had almost convinced him last night's conversation had been a hallucination of a fevered mind, driven half mad by the damage done to bake my day. After all, who would ever think he was anything special? Actually, he might be able to find out. He quickly logged into his bank account and checked the transfer history. There, at 12:57 last night, a bamboozling number of zeros had been wired to his bank account by one U.N. Owen. He snorted despite himself. U.N. Owen. Unknown. Apparently, his new partner in crime, literally, he thought with a twinge of hysteria, had a sense of humor. Or was an Agatha Christie fan at the very least. The fact remained that there was money in his account. Actual money. Because he was going to be an actual villain. The thought seemed ridiculous in the light of day, but as his eyes drifted back across his computer screen, he allowed himself a small smile. His entire life, all he had wanted to do was rage against the machine. Here was his chance to do it. A low thrum of excitement settled over him as he prepared for his day. He waltzed through his routine with fire flashing in his eyes. As he walked down the street, he had felt so malcontented and insecure on less than a day. Had it really only been a day ago? He felt lightning crackle under his skin. Sparks flared from his fingertips. If anyone dared touch him, they would ignite. His mind replayed the words the staticky murmur had conveyed to him last night. The first thing he needed to do was talk to Logan. His hidden knowledge sped his steps through the streets of miracles, so typical to everyone but him. Not for long, though, he thought with grim satisfaction. Logan's planetarium was a futuristic affair. It gleamed chrome and silver in the day's bright light. The dome in the middle had Logan convinced it kidnapped cows and made crop circles in its free time. A blast of chilled air hit him as he entered the lobby. Crowds of sightseers gawked at murals of space as they waited with varying degrees of patience for admittance. Virgil slunk into the main area with a twinge of disquiet. He knew that he was technically allowed to be here whenever he wanted, but that didn't appease the envious glares levied at him or guilt he felt for skipping the line. He wondered if that reflected poorly on his current career choice. After dodging several staff, he never knew how to greet people. He knew by face but not by name. Did he smile? He wasn't the smiling type. Was he supposed to stop and say hi? What if one of them had previously told him their name and he was supposed to remember it but didn't, and then they hated him and forbid him from ever returning? But Logan wouldn't like that, so they would get fired and have to go home to their spouse and 3 children and tell them that they'd been fired and it was all Virgil's fault. He found Logan leading a group through the exhibit. He lurked in the shadows, considering Logan. He was so animated when he spoke about space, especially to children. It was easy to see why he chose continue giving tours, even after purchasing the planetarium. His normally handsome face was rendered exquisite by the delight etched into every plane of his dark-hued countenance. His soothing voice wrapped around every person in the room in a story of space and supernovas and stardust that runs through humanity's veins. A bittersweet melancholy settled into Virgil's chest as he watched the astronomer. Virgil used to wonder why Logan would even associate with someone like him. But the truth that the intellectual cared about the emo was a much stranger story than anything his twisted mind could have concocted. He really was wonderful. Virgil had always tried to persuade himself that if it weren't for Patton's glaringly obvious crush on their friend, and Logan's equally conspicuous hard eyes, he would have made a move years ago. In reality, however, what social anxiety didn't eliminate as an option was removed by the fear of losing one of the best things in his life. In the end, all he wanted was a friend. The group applauded as Logan concluded his presentation. Using the dispersed masses as a cover, Virgil slipped over to his friend. "Great job just now," Virgil commented. Logan jumped slightly, then relaxed as he turned to see who it was. "Virgil," he acknowledged, warmth in his deep brown eyes if not his tone. "Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to see you here." Right, this wasn't a social call. Virgil had a mission to compute. "I've actually got some good news." Logan tilted his head in curiosity. I found a job." Logan's demeanor immediately brightened in pride. "Fantastic! I knew yesterday's unpleasantness was only a temporary setback." Virgil found a soft smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Yeah, I think you're right." As usual, he tacked on with a smirk. "Can I suppress my intrinsic aspect of my nature?" Logan chuckled. "So, what is it you will be doing?" A sudden jolt of panic shot through Virgil, knocking the smile off his face. How to word this? Independent contracting? Technically true. I'll be building a lot of different devices for a sponsor. Also, technically true. So I need a lab. Completely true. Ah, Logan nodded in understanding. "Please come. I think I have a suitable space." Logan led Virgil out of the exhibition room, past the entrance to the dome, and through a metal door marked "Employees and Aliens Only." A winding staircase led them into a dark, austere hallway with a half a dozen doors dotting it at regular intervals. "Most of these are staff break rooms or storage," Logan explained as they strode past the galaxy-painted doors. "But this room here at the very end was used as storage for our last exhibition, on how gravity affects the space-time continuum." He broke off as he rifled through his pockets for the key. "So, as you see, it is now empty." The door swung open. "It's a really fascinating topic," Logan's voice rang from somewhere behind Virgil as he took a few stunned steps into the enormous room. "You see, there's a direct correlation between the mass of an object and, by extension, its gravitational pull, and how time and space read to this object. I believe it has been explained by several physicists as a reminiscent of how a taut blanket reaches when a bowling ball is placed in the middle of it." "Cool," Virgil choked out, because it really was, and any other time he would have been happy to engage with Logan on the topic. But now, he was busy being swept off his feet by the sight before him. The room was incredible. It had a high ceiling with a variety of electrical cords and outlets hanging from it, perfect for anything he needed to wire. Lab tables were set at regular intervals against the walls and in a semicircle in the middle of the room. The soft click of his combat boots across the concrete floors echoed off the walls and reverberated somewhere deep in his chest as he walked further into his own personal wonderland. There was an empty aquarium set deep in the farthest wall, and a ventilated hood in the opposite of that. A spiral staircase led to a door that must have opened outside. A large space was positioned in the exact center of the room, perfect for his larger projects. He practically swooned with the pleasure when he saw a pile of scrap metal and wiring in one corner. Now he didn't have to go to the hardware store. Store clerks were always suspicious of him. In his mind's eye, he already saw this as a lab, as it could be in a few days. half-formed machines scattered across every surface, colorful beakers billowing ominously on the tables, wires sparking and gears turning in his mind and in his hands. It was perfect. But the problem with that is muon particles are highly unstable and should dissolve only a few feet into outer atmosphere, so their presence virtually everywhere on Earth at sea level lends exceedingly irrefutable evidence. Logan's baritone ramble continued from somewhere behind him. Virgil trailed a reverent finger across one of the aluminum tables. It came away dusty. Logan broke off his monologue to sneeze violently. "You okay?" Virgil asked, half amused, half concerned. "Fine, Achoo! I assure you." Virgil's eyes widened. "Hello, you're allergic to dust." The engineer cursed himself for forgetting. "Really?" Logan commented dryly. "Hadn't noticed." He gingerly prodded his swollen nose. Virgil quickly herded him out of the amazing, fantastic, wonderful laboratory and into the much more sterile exhibition rooms. "Thank you." Logan fished a handkerchief, because of course he carried a handkerchief, out of his slacks and dabbed at his nose. "The lab is perfect," Virgil mentioned once he was satisfied his friend was all right. "I'd love to rent it." Logan waved a dismissive hand. "No need for payment. The room would be wasted otherwise." Virgil grimaced in discontent, but acquiesced. Logan was far more stubborn than he. "As a matter of fact, let me give you a copy of the key." Logan reached into his pocket and found only lint. I seem to have left it downstairs while I was incapacitated. Could you get it? I've got another tour starting in..." Logan glanced out at his watch before his eyes widened in panic. 2 minutes ago. Virgil, apologies. It's downstairs. Wait, you know that. Shoot, I've got to go. Yeah, bye." Logan left in a jumbled frizzy of words and distressed gestures. Fondness curled the corners of Virgil's mouth into a grin. He loved Logan so much. The engineer ambled back downstairs, stopping at the second-to-last door. He put a hand on the bronze handle before remembering the lab had actually been down one. This was a break room. Yet he let go and stepped back with a nervous chuckle. That could have been bad. He turned away, but was yanked back by the sound of voices. Voices discussing Logan. "It's just so embarrassing," a gravelly voice complained. "I hate talking about work with anyone because I don't want them to find out my boss is a Powerless." "I know what you mean," a mousy voice sneered. "What brain damage does he have, thinking he could be in charge of us? I know he's supposed to be smart, but he's an idiot." "A useless idiot, you mean?" A high, grafting laugh drifted out. "Amen to that." On the other side of that thin door, Virgil stood, shaking with rage. His hand was on the handle. All he had to do was turn it. "Move," he told himself. "Open this door and fillet the skin off of those bigots until they beg for mercy. Make them bleed." But he couldn't. He didn't. He stumbled his way down the hallway until he found a bucket. He bent over and threw up. Tears stung at the corners of the eyes. He was such a coward. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand and slumped down against the wall until he was curled in on himself. He wished desperately someone would come down the gray corridor and ask him what was wrong. He wished that someone, anyone, would come and tell him that it was okay, that no one expected him to take on the whole world by himself. But nobody came. It wasn't until he had exhausted his supply of tears that he realized someone already had. The memory of static, of a voice pledging help and supplies and partnership, drifted across his mind. He wasn't alone. "Calm down," he told himself. He summoned the memory of this morning, the invincibility of lightning running through his veins. Calm down. And he did. He unlocked all of his muscles one by one until he could breathe again. Sighing, he put his hand down at his side. It touched something cold. Looking down, he saw the key to the lab. Something that might have passed for a grin spread across his face. Get up. And he did. Walk past that door. And he did. Go to the lab. And he did. Last night had been a fever dream, something wonderful and incredible and amazing. But here, With bile coating his tongue, his heart pounding in his chest, and his fist clenched in silent fury, he was more himself than ever. The cold metal biting into the flesh of his palm seemed like as good of a sign as any that he was doing the right thing. He fitted into the lock and opened the door. "Now go," he commanded himself, "and create something incredible."